Okay, let's unpack this. Wine. You'd think it's, well, just crushed grapes, right? That have had a bit of a party with yeast.
Pretty much on the surface.
But hold on a second. This seemingly simple drink has actually played a starring role in religious practices across the globe for thousands of years.
Absolutely. Ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, they all had their wine gods, their rituals.
Right. And Judaism. You can't have Kidush or a Passover Seder without it.
That's true.
Christianity, I mean, obviously with the Eucharist. And turning water into wine, that miracle.
That's a big one.
And here's a surprising one. Even in pre-prohibition Islamic cultures, wine popped up.
Yeah.
In poetry as a metaphor.
Yeah, despite the later strict rules against alcohol, which is fascinating in itself.
And that's just, scratching the surface of how fermented drinks have been used in rituals worldwide.
And what's really interesting is that these ancient connections
Between what we drink and what we believe.
Exactly. They're still shaping whole industries, like right now. It's not just history book stuff.
Right, it's alive, a living influence.
Definitely.
Which brings us perfectly, actually, to today's deep dive. We're swirling into the fascinating world of kosher and halal wines. Think about it. Age-old religious laws meeting the very modern world of winemaking. It raises some, intriguing questions.
About tradition, innovation, what it actually takes to make something acceptable, for specific faith communities.
Totally. We've gathered some really insightful material to help us navigate this.
Yeah, we have some sources looking at the deep cultural and religious meaning of wine through history.
And detailed breakdowns, right, of kosher and halal dietary laws, specifically how they apply to making wine.
Exactly. And even the perspective of a sommelier who's right there in the middle of it all.
Okay. So for you, our listener, our mission today is to uncork the key requirements, the surprising twists in production.
And maybe some unexpected similarities between kosher and halal wines.
Yeah. We're aiming for those aha moments, a real shortcut to understanding these specialized and, frankly, pretty fascinating corners of the wine world. Ready for this deep dive?
Let's do it. Let's begin, maybe, by looking at kosher wine, which, as you said, has this incredibly rich history and, a really central place in Jewish ritual life.
Okay. So before we dive into the wine part,
Yeah.
what are the absolute basics we need to get about kosher food generally, like kashrut?
Right, kashrut. At its heart, it's a framework from the Torah. It outlines permitted and prohibited foods.
Like which animals?
Which animals, yes. And the specific method of ritual slaughter, that's called shechita.
Shechita, okay.
And a really firm rule about not mixing meat and dairy. That's a big one.
Got it. Okay, so how do those general rules then become specific rules for wine? Seems different from, say, meat.
It is, because wine historically had such symbolic weight in various religious ceremonies, not just Jewish ones, by the way.
Right.
Kosher law puts a particular focus on its ritual purity and preventing any association with what might be seen as idolatrous use.
So it's about keeping it pure for its sacred purpose within Judaism.
Exactly, ensuring it remains exclusively for that.
That makes sense. So, okay, making kosher wine. What are the non-negotiables in the actual process?
Well, it technically starts in the vineyard.
Mm.
And in Israel, there are agricultural laws that can come into play.
Like what?
Things like Kilium, not planting different species together, or Shemitah, the sabbatical year for the land. Even rules about tithing the harvest, Teruma and Mazra.
Wow, okay. Complex.
It can be. But for kosher wine made outside Israel, the real intense focus starts when the grapes actually arrive at the winery.
And who's the person making sure everything stays on track there? The rule keeper.
That would be the rabbi or the Mashgiach. They have to be a Sabbath observant Jew.
And they're there all the time.
Pretty much. Continuous supervision from the moment the grapes come in, right through fermentation, aging, bottling, until the bottle is sealed.
What are they checking for?
They ensure only kosher certified ingredients are used, that the equipment is kosher, and that all the handling follows Jewish law. It's a constant oversight.
So it's not just about the grapes being inherently kosher. It's everything that touches them afterwards.
Precisely. Every single ingredient, even tiny amounts, it all needs kosher certification.
Like the yeast.
The yeast, absolutely. Any enzymes used, even the fining agents used for clarification.
It's fining agents.
Yeah.
Like to make it clear.
Exactly. So bentonite, which is a type of clay, that's usually fine. But traditional agents like, say, gelatin or casein, they need specific kosher certification and very careful sourcing and handling.
Okay. And the winery itself, the tanks, the pipes, the bottling line, that all needs to be kosher too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the equipment. It either has to be certified kosher from the start or it goes through a ritual purification process.
What's that called?
Kashering. It varies depending on the equipment, but might involve things like boiling water or intense heat.
Sounds serious.
It is. Some dedicated kosher wineries will even have completely separate sets of equipment just to avoid any possible cross-contamination risk.
Now, when you say kosher wine, does that bring a specific style to mind? Like, is it all sweet red wine?
No, not at all. That's a bit of an old stereotype, maybe linked to some older brands. The world of kosher wine today is surprisingly broad.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You can find kosher versions of pretty much every style you can think of. Robust reds, crisp whites, delicate rosés, celebratory sparklers, even luscious dessert wines.
I came from all over.
All over the globe.
Give me a taste. Where are these kosher wines coming from?
Well, Israel is obviously a major hub, and its wine industry has, really revolutionized itself in recent decades, producing some truly world-class stuff.
Any names I might know?
You have established names like Carmel, Golan Heights Winery, but also some fantastic boutique producers. Flam, Castel, Yatir, really top tier.
Wow. But it's not just Israel.
Oh no, far from it. You'll find significant kosher production in France, even in prestigious places like Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne.
Seriously, like famous chateau making kosher runs.
Sometimes, yes, or working with specialized producers like IDS or Univitis. The United States is another key area, California especially.
Who's big there?
Wineries like Herzog, Covenant, Hagafen, and New York State too, with Kidem and Manischewitz.
Manischewitz, I know that one.
Right, and interestingly, Manischewitz has found this surprising crossover appeal way beyond just the Jewish community.
Huh, and anywhere else.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget places like Argentina, Chile, South Africa, Italy, Spain. They're all part of the growing kosher wine map.
So these wines aren't just, for dinner any night, right? They have specific roles in Jewish ceremonies.
Absolutely central. Indispensable, really, for many key Jewish rituals.
Like that.
Think about Kiddush. That's the blessing recited over wine on Shabbat and holidays. It's a cornerstone of the Passover Seder. The 4 cups of wine are specifically mandated.
4 cups.
And it plays a role in joyous occasions. Weddings under the chuppah, the welcoming ceremony for newborns, Brit Milah, other big life events.
So it symbolizes joy, holiness.
Joy, holiness, tradition, community, that unbroken connection. It's very powerful.
Now, I've definitely heard the term Mevushal wine. What's the deal with that? Is it different?
It is. Mevushal basically means cooked or boiled, but in practice, it's usually a flash pasteurization process, heated to a high temp for a very short time.
Why do that? Does it change the taste?
Well, the key benefit is that once a wine is mevushal, it can be handled poured, served by non-observant individuals without losing its kosher status.
So that makes it practical for restaurants or big events.
Exactly. Where the serving staff might not be Jewish or Sabbath observant, historically, yeah, some people thought mevushal wines weren't as good quality because of the heat.
But that's changed.
Big time. Advancements in the techniques like flash pasteurization are much gentler now. You can find some really excellent mevushal wines that hold onto their character much better.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's explore the world of halal wine. What are the fundamentals we need to grasp here?
Okay, so halal dietary law in Islam comes from the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. It outlines what's permissible halal and what's forbidden haram.
And the basics.
Key things include certain animals are okay if slaughtered following a specific ritual called dabiha.
Dabiha? Like shikiyah?
Similar idea, yes. It involves invoking God's name, Bismillah. Pork is strictly forbidden. Consumption of blood, also forbidden.
Right. And the really big point of difference when we talk about halal wine, I guess, is the alcohol, right? It almost sounds like an oxymoron.
You've hit the absolute nail on the head. That is the central challenge. The prohibition of alcohol, or Khamr, in Islam is very clear, explicit in the Quran.
So no wiggle room, like even a tiny bit is forbidden.
The general mainstream understanding is yes. Even small amounts are typically considered haram, forbidden.
Okay. So if alcohol is totally off limits, how can you even have something called halal wine? What's the process there?
Well, it's not wine in the traditional fermented sense. It involves taking wine that was fermented and then removing the alcohol. Dealcoholization.
How do they do that? Sounds tricky.
There are several technologies. One common one is vacuum distillation.
Good.
They gently heat the wine under reduced pressure. This lowers the boiling point of alcohol, so it evaporates off without needing really high heat that would cook the flavors.
Trying to keep the wine's essence intact.
Trying to, yes.
Oh, neat.
Preserve those delicate aroma compounds.
What other ways do they do it?
Another key technique is reverse osmosis.
It's like for water purification?
Sort of, yeah. The wine is forced through a superfine membrane under high pressure. It separates water and alcohol from the bigger flavor and color molecules.
And then?
Then they distill the alcohol out of that water-alcohol mix and recombine the alcohol-free water part with the concentrated flavor stuff.
Wow. Complicated. Any other methods?
There's something called rotating cone columns. That's pretty sophisticated. Uses thin films of wine spread over rotating cones in a vacuum. Very efficient. Very gentle alcohol removal.
Okay.
And there are some less common ones too, simple evaporation, dialysis, other membrane techniques, even some experimental biological methods.
It sounds like taking out the alcohol, no matter how gently, must change the final drink somehow.
Oh, it absolutely does. It has a significant impact. Alcohol gives wine body, texture, affects how we perceive sweetness, the overall balance.
And the smell, right? The aroma.
Exactly. Alcohol helps carry and release those aromas. So dealcoholization definitely changes things. The drink might feel lighter, different mouthfeel. The aroma profile might be less intense or just different.
And just like with kosher, I assume there are strict rules about any other ingredients used in making these halal drinks?
Absolutely. Every single thing. From the grape juice itself, any yeasts used initially,
Oh.
the clarifying agents, which must be plant or mineral-based, no animal products like gelatin unless halal certified.
Right.
Any added flavorings, colorings, preservatives, everything has to be certified halal by a recognized authority. That certification is crucial for consumer trust.
So, if traditional alcoholic wine is out, what kinds of non-alcoholic drinks are actually available for people looking for halal options?
You see a whole spectrum, really. At the simpler end, you might find just like fizzy grape juices, carbonated grape juice, often pretty sweet.
Okay.
Then there are more complex grape juice-based drinks. Producers might add specific aromas, flavors, maybe some acids, trying to mimic the profile of different wine styles, a Chardonnay style, a Merlot style, etc.
But the key thing is they never had alcohol, or it was removed.
Exactly. Either the alcohol was removed after a fermentation process, or in the case of the complex juices, there was no alcoholic fermentation to begin with. That's the critical difference.
And is there actually a big demand for these kinds of drinks?
Oh, definitely. It's growing significantly, both within Muslim communities worldwide, obviously, but also among non-Muslims.
Really? Why non-Muslims?
People looking for alcohol-free options for health reasons, lifestyle choices, maybe religious reasons of their own, or just wanting something sophisticated to drink that isn't alcoholic.
Huh. It sounds like this could represent, I don't know, a major untapped potential for the traditional wine industry.
It certainly could. I mean, the global Muslim population is huge, and it's a growing consumer segment.
So a big market opportunity.
A very real opportunity, yes, for wineries and beverage companies to expand their reach, producing high-quality, halal-certified, non-alcoholic alternatives.
But it takes effort, right?
For sure, it needs ongoing investment in R&D to keep improving the quality, the taste, the whole sensory experience of these dealcoholized products. And of course, culturally sensitive marketing is key.
Okay, let's step back a bit. Get that bird's eye view.
Okay.
Comparing kosher and halal wine production, what are the main similarities and the biggest differences?
Well, in some ways, the similarities are quite striking. Both demand really strict adherence to religious dietary laws.
Right, the rules are paramount.
Absolutely. Both involve rigorous supervision, detailed certification processes, meticulous control over ingredients, equipment, everything.
And for the people following these rules, it's about more than just food and drink.
Definitely. For both communities, these practices are deeply rooted in faith. They're important expressions of religious identity, community connection, acts of faith, really.
But the elephant in the room, it's still the alcohol, isn't it? That seems like the fundamental split.
That is precisely it. The most fundamental difference comes down to presence versus total absence of alcohol.
So kosher wine is alcoholic.
Yes, by definition. It's alcoholic grape wine, just made under very specific religious rules.
Whereas halal wine
Is strictly non-alcoholic. Because of that clear Islamic prohibition, that one difference dictates completely different production paths and end results.
Okay. And who are the gatekeepers? The organizations that actually give the stamp of approval, the kosher or halal certification.
There are well-established, recognized bodies for both. For kosher, you'll often see symbols on the bottle like the OU, the OK, Kuf K. Those are some big ones.
Right. I think I've seen those.
And for halal certification, prominent organizations include the HFA, Halal Food Authority. MUI in Indonesia is huge. Instituto Halal in Spain. There are others globally, too.
And those labels are really important.
Absolutely vital. For consumer trust, they provide the assurance that the product actually meets the required religious standards. People rely on them.
All these extra layers, the supervision, the special ingredients, maybe special equipment, the certification itself that must add up, right? Impacting the process and the cost?
Oh, it certainly does. For kosher wine, you've got the cost of the rabbinic supervision, which is ongoing. Potential investment in dedicated equipment, or the cost and downtime needed for cashering existing equipment. Plus, kosher certified ingredients can sometimes cost more.
And the Mevushal thing adds complexity too.
Well, for non-Mevushal wine, the restriction on who can handle it during production and serving definitely adds logistical complexity and potentially cost.
Okay. And for halal wine, what adds cost there?
The big one is often the initial investment in the dealcoholization technology. That equipment isn't cheap.
Right.
Plus the ongoing fees for halal certification and the really stringent measures needed to prevent any cross-contamination with haram substances like alcohol or pork derivatives throughout the entire production chain.
So how are these wines generally received? How do they fit into the bigger global market picture?
Kosher wine has a very well-established acceptance within Jewish communities globally. That's a given.
But beyond that?
And increasingly, as the quality has shot up over the last few decades, it's gaining more recognition and appreciation in the broader wine market, too. People buy it just because it's good wine.
And the halal alternatives?
Their presence is definitely expanding, becoming much more visible, especially in Muslim-majority markets, but also, as we said, attracting interest from non-Muslim consumers looking for those quality alcohol-free options.
So considering all these specific rules, the processes, what are the main hurdles producers face if they want to get into kosher or halal wine? And what are the opportunities that make it worthwhile?
Well, a primary challenge for both is maintaining quality and authenticity while sticking strictly to the religious rules.
Like the Mevushal quality issue you mentioned.
Exactly. Ensuring Mevushal wines meet modern expectations. And for halal wine, the big ongoing challenge is refining those dealcoholization methods to get the sensory profile, the taste, the mouthfeel closer to traditional wine.
What else makes it tough?
The higher production costs, we talked about supervision, certification, specialized processes, equipment that's a constant hurdle for both.
Makes sense.
And honestly, for wineries not already familiar with kosher law, just the sheer complexity of the requirements can feel pretty daunting, a significant barrier to entry.
Okay, but on the flip side, there must be compelling reasons why producers do navigate all this. What are the opportunities?
Oh, absolutely. There's a real opportunity to serve expanding niche markets, and these markets often have very loyal consumer bases.
People specifically seeking out kosher or halal products.
Exactly. So by catering to these needs, producers can build strong brand loyalty. It's also a way to sort of valorize the cultural and religious identity of these consumers, showing respect.
And it pushes innovation, too.
It can be a powerful driver for innovation, both in adapting traditional winemaking for kosher rules and definitely in developing better dealcoholization tech for halal alternatives.
Opens new markets.
For sure, new geographic markets, new commercial horizons. It allows for strategic differentiation, setting your product apart, and that certification adds real value.
So communication is key.
Crucial. Success really hinges on educating consumers, being transparent, and building trust. And those recognized certifications are the bedrock of that trust.
So as we kind of bring this fascinating deep dive towards a close, what's the main thing you'd want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think the key takeaway is just how kosher and halal wines offer this really compelling window into the intersection of tradition, faith, and the very modern global marketplace for food and drink.
It really highlights that conversation between religion, culture, and production, doesn't it?
It really does, an ongoing dialogue.
And looking ahead, what do you see? What's the future for these specialized wine segments?
I think we'll definitely see continued growth and innovation in both kosher wine quality and variety, and in the ongoing quest to make non-alcoholic halal options even better, more wine-like.
More acceptance, maybe?
Hopefully, yes. As these specialized wines become more visible, more understood in the broader market, there's a real potential there for greater cross-cultural understanding and appreciation. And, as our sommelier source put it quite nicely, it's really about celebrating the incredible diversity and the constant innovation within the world of wine. And just having respect for the different traditions that shape it.
That's a really insightful perspective to end on. So for you, our listener, maybe something to ponder, just how deeply do cultural and religious practices shape even products that seem as, well, straightforward as wine? It really makes you think, doesn't it? About what other aspects of our lives are similarly influenced, perhaps in ways we don't always notice.
Good question.
Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today.